Hello, welcome back. I want to talk a little bit today about Soundtoys. We're not going to do any mixing today. I just want to talk about this company for a second. They're doing this awesome thing where they're letting you use their effects rack for free through June 30th, which is an amazing thing. This company does great emulations of old equipment, hard to find effects, things that we look for, in pawn shops and stuff for years and end up buying them on eBay for $1 bazillion. Well, you can get them in a rack mount here, and this is not a paid for kind of video. They're not letting me do this for for payment or anything. I just really dig this company, and this is awesome, especially right now when we're all in quarantine. So, as they say, stay home, stay creative. Let's go through some of these effects here. What I've done, I'm going to pull up a Pro Tools project here. I have a couple of audio clips here to explain what they're doing in some of these effects, but I've instantiated the effects rack right here on this track. When I pull it up, we get this thing. And it's sort of made to look like your effects rack in your studio, where you have a kind of a control base up here at the top, and we have all these effects over here on the side. Tons of stuff to use. Let's go through this from left to right at first. Up here we have a tempo set. So you can follow the tempo of your file that you're working on. You can sync it that way, or you can do it for a free tempo, or tap the tempo if you want to. This section right here is pretty cool. You can attenuate the input or output of the effects, and then you can also recycle that signal through the effect, which is not easily done on a rack. You have to do a lot of wiring to get that the right way. And then, of course, there's a mix button, which will let you, put in more of the effect that you've put on or take it away, which it's kind of awesome. So let's take a look at some of these effects real fast. I won't go through the history of all of them because I just don't have time when I don't know them all. So let's start with the Crystalizer. We'll pull this over here from top to bottom. The Crystalizer, this is a pretty neat effect. This goes back to the old Eventide H3000. The Eventide came out in the mid-'80s. Most people had them in their studios. You heard them on millions of records, and they had a bunch of programs in them. They're really hard to find in good shape nowadays, but this is a part of the H3000 that is known as the reverse shift algorithm. And there was a patch that you could pull up on that program that was called Crystal Echoes, I think, and it's kind of hard to explain. So let me just try something right here. I'm going to put this down on the piano part. Let me just move this down here. And what we're going to do, I'm going to play this without the effect, so you can hear this piano play. Cool. Now I'm going to turn that effect on. Kind of crazy, right? It's hard to explain what's going on. There's some pitch shifting. There's some delay going on. We can change those things here: pitch, splice, delay, recycle. We can change the mix. Let's hear what the entire thing, just the effect, sounds like. Cool. Now on all these things too, on these buttons over here, if I have this clicked on, I can pull through their presets and go up here to some of their crystal presets, maybe emeralds. Let's hear that one. All these controls right here are automatable. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff, like start it with nothing and then pull it in. Pull it back out. Pretty hip. Change the pitch. Pretty crazy effect, right? You pull that back down. There's all kinds of stuff you can do in that. To get rid of this from the rack, all you do is grab it, put it back on the side. Now, probably one of the big ones that everyone kind of uses is this one, the Decapitator. This is a pretty deep plugin, but I'll try to go through it kind of fast here for you. We have basically a couple of emulations of preamps and distortion makers, and a good way to, let me pull this up here to the drum one for this one so we can hear this on there. A good way to show what this is doing is to try to manipulate some of these drum sounds with it. What we have a drive signal. That means how much distortion basically is what's going on. We have a low cut, pretty self-explanatory. The tone, which is kind of cool, you can go from brighter to darker and it just changes the overall tone. We have a high cut, same idea as the low cut. Then we have these two controls on the sides. The thump control, this little switch right here, when you push it up, when we turn that on, what that does is it gives about a 3 to 5 dB bump in the low end at the cutoff frequency. So in other words, let me click on this low cut and you'll see if I have this at maybe 83.9 hertz, then at 83.9 hertz, it's not just going to cut off the frequencies below it, it's going to give a little bump right there at that part and then come back down to natural sound. Kind of what happens on a tape machine, sort of. I know they write that on their page or their manual about it, but it's not really the same thing. It's sort of kind of cool though. It's like a resonant filter, but it's not very resonant. Very cool. You can use that in your low end. Now on this part here, the steep button here controls the high cut and how steep the cutoff is. If you have it at normal, there is about a 6 dB per octave cutoff, which is kind of gentle cutoff at the high end. And if I hit the steep button, it jumps to about 30 dB. So 30 dB is pretty intense. pretty intense. So it's a sound tool. So we have that. We have the output. We have an auto output, so that if that's on, let's say that's on, and I move the drive button up, you'll see that output changes to compensate. Now in my experience, this is not that great of an output compensation. I usually leave it off and then do it myself. It's pretty close though. Sounds good. And of course we have this mix of dry and wet and how much you want. So next part of the plugin, we have the style here, and these are the sounds of the distortion we're having. This is super important part of the plugin. If it's on the A, we actually have an Ampex 350. That's an old tube tape machine, and they've emulated the input of that, the preamp of that sound. It's pretty smooth. It's a pretty great sound. The E is an EMI channel. I believe that they use the TG channel. The TG channel is based on the TG consoles that Pink Floyd recorded through, the Beatles did Abbey Road through. We can drive that preamp. That's what that's for. The N is a Neve. I believe it's the 1057. It was the preamp that came before the 1073. So it sounds like a Neve. It's pretty heavy, and the bottom is pretty hefty. Now the last two are different. The last two belong to the same piece of equipment. The T stands for triode, P stands for pentode. T is the triode part of the thermionic culture vulture. P is the pentode side of that same effects box, and those are distortion boxes that are in lots of studios. They're just they kind of have the sound of amps, like a guitar amp. If you're on the triode side, if that would be the input stage, the input preamp of a guitar amp. The P, that's actually the output stage of the amp. So you can kind of change those up a little bit. So let's start with the A. Let's listen to that for a second on the drums. That distortion is kind of cool. Now, what I can do is I can kind of use a cutoff to get some of that flabbiness out. High cut. Now, if I want to add a little bit of that resonance back, I just hit this thump button. Awesome. This button here that says punish is a 20 dB boost into the distortion circuit. So that, I mean, that would, you got to be careful. Let's pull this down, put this punish on. Right. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to take this mix knob and pull it all the way to dry, and we'll blend that in. Cool. Let's turn that back off. Let's go to the EMI emulation. Let's listen to that one right fast. Pull this back up to the full mix. Cool. Neve. That Neve preamp was actually, if I remember correctly, was done. It used germanium transistors, kind of like a fuzz pedal. So that's the sound of those kind of like, I guess you would say crapping out, but it's a good sound. Triode. Pentode. Right on. Lots of distortion sounds in here. This is pretty much the sound of any of the Chad Blake kind of productions, etc. You kind of will run these in parallel underneath another track just to make it fatter sounding. Cool. Let's move on. This monster is based on the old Shure Level-Loc compressor. I think it was a compressor for a podium mic, and it kills anything that comes into it. That may sound weird, but let's take a listen to it, and I think you'll see what I mean. I'm going to turn this off first, and then we'll crank these down. We'll play this drum loop again. Utter destruction. I love it. We have a slow release and a fast release. Let's listen to the fast one. This darkness knob is basically a high cut, so let's mix that into the drums. It's crazy. So if you put this on a parallel channel, it's easier to use. Just an insane effect. Echoboy. You can watch a million videos on Echoboy. It's basically an analog echo processor. It works like a tape delay. It's super deep. It has all kinds of control over how you do the timing of it, the high cut, low cuts, the groove. You can swing or shuffle. You can do single echoes, dual echoes. It's crazy. And then when you get over here, we have the different styles of echo and master tape, studio tape. You know, they even have the old the Bensonette, like the Echo Rec kind of style. Pretty hip. When you get through with that, you can hit the tweak button and even go farther, or style edit and go into that and change all those as well. It's crazy. It's huge. It's used everywhere. Let's look at this one. This is the Echoboy Jr. And because the Echoboy is so complicated, they made a junior version. It's the same thing. You just have easier controls over it. You don't have all that tweak kind of stuff where you can change the LFOs and the wow flutter of the tape, etc. Pretty cool. That's just the easier version of it. FilterFreak. This thing is bizarre. It's a creative resonant filtering effect. It's pretty cool. It's a filter sweeper. It's kind of like those old Mutron effects. It's pretty cool on synths and all kinds of stuff like that. Let me see if I have. Let me try it down here on the marimba. We'll pull up a preset out of the default sweeps. Let's try the laser ramp. Just like on all these, we have all these controls where we can change how many poles, their shape of it. Let's move this to this one, see what happens. Pretty crazy. Very cool effect. That's the FilterFreak. Microshift is another eventide effect. It's based on the same hardware unit that the Crystalizer was, the H3000. It's basically, you can think of it as a thickener. It is it's shifting pitch, and it with the detune, and it also has a delay on it and 3 different styles of pitch change. If I put that on, let's say a vocal, let me pull it up here to this vocal. Let's just listen to the vocal without the effect.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
I'm gonna hit that again.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
If you're listening on headphones, that's pretty crazy. That's style 1. Style 2 is a little bit different.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Style 3.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Detune, if I hit this up here, we have a percentage of detuning that we can do.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
And they change with the styles.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
And you're hearing a little bit of delay before that effect comes in, and you can tighten that up a little bit.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
This focus is basically where the most amount of shifting is happening.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Now that's all of it on. So if I mix that in.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
You can use it to thicken up vocals. You can make anything sound bigger using this effect. It's pretty cool. Let's move over to the PanMan. This is an auto panner, as you may have guessed, the rhythmic automatic panner. I believe it was based on the old scanner effect, which is a really hard to find effect, but basically it's just going to pan for you.
Come on, come on, come on, come on.
I can change the speed of it.
Come on, come on.
The direction.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on.
How much it leans to the left or right.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Pretty cool. Next up, we have the PhaseMistress, which is a simple phaser. Basically, it's every type of phaser you can imagine, like the old MXR Phase 90. Same idea.
Come on, come on, come on.
Let's try it on the drums right fast. You can change the shape of the wave, the rate of it. It's just kind of crazy. All of these are customizable under the style edit. You can also do the LFO edits. You can change a lot of stuff on the output end. You can even change the shape editor. Pretty crazy. Very, very useful, especially on guitars and stuff. PrimalTap. PrimalTap is based on the old Lexicon Prime Time. That was, God, I think the original one was late 70s. Anytime you've listened to Peter Gabriel or Daniel Lanois or Brian Eno, they use these quite a bit. It's a delay, and I don't know what else to say. It can get pretty crazy, though. We have this feedback portion. One of the cool things is as you add to this multiply section over here, the signal is degraded just like the old hardware unit was. Pretty hip. We have all kinds of control over these, and as usual you have presets. Let's try one of these. Double tap. Let's try it on something else. Let's try it on the marimba right fast. All kinds of fun to be had there. There's also the freeze button, which is insane. If I hit that, it will actually continuously repeat what's going on. Until you turn it off. Very cool. Radiator is an old mixer. It's basically the old Altec 1567A tube mixer. I've seen these in 100,000 churches. It's also the sound of Motown. This is what they use. So this is an emulation of that mixer with the input channel and the EQ. There's a noisy channel, there's a clean channel. Let's use the clean and push this thing pretty hard. Now without. And with. The Sie-Q is an emulation of the old Siemens broadcast equalizer. I think it was the W295, made in the 60s, I'm pretty sure. This is it's a simple EQ. It can be used on tracks, and it can especially be used on the mix bus. If I have, let's see here, I'm going to keep it on that marimba for a second here. The famous part of this equalizer is the high end. It's just known for being very open and airy. That's all the way up, and it's still not, you know, hurting my ears. It's very smooth sounding. Next up, we have the Tremolator. Tremolator is it's a tremolo. It's a simple tremolo. It's kind of an all-in-one. It's also an auto gate. You can use it that way. Emulates the old Fender kind of amps. It can do the Wurlitzer sound. I think it even has a preset for the Wurlitzer sound. We have all kinds of stuff in here. We have the Fender style. Wurlitzer style. Let me pull that down to the electric piano. This is the electric piano without the effect. With the effect. Cool. Those are all the effects that are in the rack unit, but there's also a part up here. We have presets based on all kinds of stuff. Spaces, filters, delays, choruses. If I wanted to have a C1 type chorus, I'll pull that up. It will go ahead and pull up the Echoboy and give me that sound, of which I can change around if I want to, do whatever I want to it. Let's look at one of the crazy ones. The sound designs are great. Radio bad connection. Now, of course, I have this control at the top where I can change that down. I can also feed that back into itself. Craziness. Okay, that's the Soundtoys effects rack. See you guys later. Take it easy.